Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara, Jaya Jaya Shankara. Episode 8. Shri Mahaswami, the Sage with Eyes of Light. The Diary of a Seeker of Truth. Dr.Serge Demetrian. Dear devotees, now we shall continue to listen to the first part of this divine book under the subtitle Dawn, first chapter, first encounter. Secunderabad, Monday, 16th August 1968. The first darshan of Shri Mahaswami. In the morning of the 16th August, I was welcomed at the railway station by my host, two brothers, both university professors at Hyderabad, and by two friends from Madras who had come earlier, all of them Indians. The much-awaited meeting with the Mahaswami was to take place on that very afternoon by 4 p.m. at Secunderabad, the twin city of Hyderabad. Unusually, Shri Mahaswami was residing in the company of his successor, the junior Swami, in Padmarao Nagar, a district of Secunderabad. Although belonging to an order of itinerant monks who only walk and frequently change their dwelling place, there is an interval each year, normally in the months of July and August, when they reside in one place and devote their time to philosophical studies. This period commences with an important puja during which, by tradition, there is the worship of the great sage Vyasa, a form of Shri Krishna and the master of wisdom par excellence. There was a group of 7 of us who started by car after lunch. In the party were our 2 hosts along with their spouses, my 2 friends from Madras, and myself. All the men of our group wore a dhoti, the traditional dress of southern Indians. Our shirts have been replaced by shawls that have to be wound around the waist or the chest when standing or sitting before Shri Mahaswami or in the temples. The women wore traditional saris. We stopped before a place that looked like a factory. On a large board was a sign, Swarajya Press, which was a printing press firm. We entered, and after passing through some office buildings, we reached a narrow courtyard. We are invited to sit cross-legged on a large bluish carpet stretched at the feet of a 5 steps staircase leading up to a narrow platform about 1 meter above us. On this platform, at the back, was an open door where Shri Mahaswami would appear. One could see inside the door the beginnings of a large hall. From the position of the sun, I drew the conclusion that we were facing north. That is the traditional way to sit or stand when one comes in front of a sage. Was it by chance? I look across the opening of the door towards the hall behind, a dark space, black and deep as the abyss of time. When suddenly, quite far away, the obscurity faintly shivers. Its center is transformed by a colored undulation, a shade which progressively passes into orange develops. It becomes concentrated, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the threshold of the door, there appears Shri Mahaswami. He stands for a long minute in front of us. He is an exceptional being, harmony, discreet power, and understanding. This is the bundle of the first impressions. There was nothing that shocked one's sensitivity, neither posture nor gesture. He seems to possess a self-contained force effortlessly emanating from him while the sharpness of his mind is instantly apparent. In stature, he was medium to under medium size, somewhat below 1.50 meters, but he looked taller due to the aura that surrounded him. He was lean, and his more than 70 years did not seem a burden to him. The face was of an agreeable oval form and crowned by a high and even forehead that was dominated by the eyes. From the distance where I stood, they seemed bright, deep, and penetrating. His long and fine ears were remarkable. The rest of the face, in which I guessed the expressive traits, was concealed besides a strong but well-shaped nose by a short white beard that framed the face and accentuated the high forehead. He was clad in a simple, hand-woven drab orange ochre cloth, which wound around his waist from the knees upward, leaving uncovered the old gold skin of his slender legs. The upper part of the clothing was wrapped like a cape over the shoulders and the head. In the right hand was kept a water vessel made out of polished brown wood. He held to his chest in the interior angle of the left elbow his monk's staff, danda, with an ochre folded up cloth, that is Brahma Sutra, near the top that, being very sacred, contains the concentrated power of wisdom. The fingers of his left hand touched a simple string of Rudraksha beads round his neck. This simply dressed monk, who demonstrated the powerful continuity of a direct spiritual line established more than 2000 years ago, seemed to come directly out of an ancient bas-relief carved in granite by his spiritual ancestor who had established the monastic order to which he belonged. Sri Mahaswami, the spiritual head of hundreds of millions of Hindus, did not wear an emblem of his position. Only the radiance of his personality would distinguish him from the barefooted and saffron-clad monks or sadhus whom one frequently observes on the roads of southern India. We were all standing with our hands in Anjali, some bowed and put down in front of him an offering of large plate-like baskets of flowers or fruits. Then, because the yard was small and cramped, everybody looked for a place to fully prostrate. I half prostrated on the ground. He patiently waited for us to finish. Then, through a gesture, invited us to take our place on the large carpet spread over the ground. He sat down easily, legs crossed on the narrow platform where an assistant had spread a little yellow mat of woven herbs and then had immediately withdrawn. Sri Mahaswami, facing south and 5 steps above the yard in which we are seated, allowed us to see him without any hindrance. He deposited carefully his danda against the wall on his left side and the water vessel on the ground on his right side. The leader of our group, the elder of my friends from Madras, who would be the interpreter, stood on the left side of the platform. The introductions started. I was the first. Mr. Demetrian is a research fellow in philosophy. He comes from Romania. He said in English as I came up to stand in front of Sri Mahaswami. Sri Mahaswami tilted his head on one side so as to better hear and asked my name to be repeated. I stood straight, exactly in front of him, at about 2 meters distance. His eyes pierced me and his sight reached the bottom of my heart. Demetrian, Demetrian, he pronounced clearly. Then, after a moment, when he seemed having searched in his memory, he shook his head approvingly and showed by a sign that I was to sit once again. I felt his piercing eyes directly penetrating me as I went back to my place, slightly behind the group, but exactly in front of him. And only then he passed to the next person in the audience. All the members of the group were introduced in turn. Each one stood, spoke his name and that of his spouse, stated briefly who he was, and sat again. They were speaking Telugu, the local language. The round of introductions came to an end at the left of the Mahaswami. Although my friends from Madras were well known to the Mahaswami since a long time, they still repeated their names. We are sitting now on our places on the carpet and we wait. Sri Mahaswami is thoughtful. He does not seem in a hurry. Then he addresses in Telugu each one of our group in front of me. As the discussion proceeds slowly in a sustained but leisurely manner, I made good use of my vantage point in front of him and at some 2.5 meters distance by taking my own time observing him closely. Placed above us in his ochre robe, Sri Mahaswami is outlined sharply against the dark space of the doorway and of the hall behind him. He sits cross-legged and straight, but with ease and distinction that does not intimidate his interlocutors. His attitude helps them to open themselves up. He vaguely resembles a dear and respected professor in biology who had impressed me in secondary school at Bucharest. I observe that, unlike the majority of the Indians, his skin is fair towards gold and his robe seems to be accentuate with this particular shade. His gestures are restrained but quite vivacious as all of his supple body takes part in the discussion. He possesses an animate language of the hands. The movements of his fingers accompany, enlarge and underline his words, especially when he questions or when he wants to stress an idea. He uses some characteristic signs that render the talk more alive and comprehensible. He is attentive at every word of his questioner and rarely smiles. Often he stops asking for a phrase to be repeated and he remains thoughtful a while before answering, especially when someone puts a question or submits a demand. From time to time, he looks above us and around us. Suddenly, he observed how some young boys who were in the yard had come too near on his left side and could topple his danda. He stopped talking, seized his stick. I noticed the mobility of his fingers, which easily revert backwards, and by a discreet but effectual gesture, he warned them, as if he wanted to strike them. The boys quickly moved away. There is the Indian story of a too gentle young sadhu who was manhandled by a lout, which came into my mind. When the disciple reported the facts to his master, he received an unexpected scolding. "Why did you not protect yourself?" "Oh, master," replied the disciple, "is it not yourself who had enjoined us to be gentle towards every living being?" "This is true," was the reply of the master, "but I did not stop you from making a gesture as if to defend yourself." Sri Mahaswami continued his enquiries with the members of our group. There was a royal composure in his attitude, his gestures, and his way of speaking. Is it that he was accustomed to the practice of these types of encounters after more than 60 years of going up and down the Indian subcontinent? Is it his extended culture or his vast human experience? One could ponder on these questions if there were not his eyes. I could not stop admiring them. They were incomparable wells through which a force seemed to run in two directions, towards the exterior, penetrating everything, seeing everything, understanding everything, and also towards the interior when the force returned to its source. The heart of Sri Mahaswami, which was loaded with what it would have chosen to take from our heart if it had not already dragged along the entire heart. To try to comprehend the mystery of this double current would involve a total and perpetual devotion, but on the strict condition that he would accept it. However, the time was running short. Sri Mahaswami had reached the last but one of the visitors who preceded me. I threw a short look behind when I heard some commotion. The workers and staff of the factory stood in close array, perched on boxes, benches, and some even climbed up a ladder. This gathering at the feet of Sri Mahaswami was an uncommon event, and the audience granted to a foreigner only enhanced their interest. Sri Mahaswami took a longer time with the last visitor before me. Now he had the choice between two eventualities: to address me or to overlap me and address my friends from Madras at his left side. I was waiting alert for any of these eventualities. The moment of the choice came. He leaned over with his forehead in front and allowed himself a pause for reflection. The corner of his cloth covering his head had slipped. I was surprised by the position of the hairs on his head. In the middle, from front towards the back, there was a white and brilliant crest 2 inches in width and 6 inches in length. This crest was connected behind with the hair on the occipital bone and on the temples. One could have thought that he was wearing the sign of a trident on his head, with the spikes turned to the front, shaped by his short white silvery hair. Sri Mahaswami lifted his head and called the elder of my friends from Madras, Dr. T.M.P. Mahadevan. He spoke to him in Tamil while pointing his hand at me. In between their exchange, I stood up. My friend addressed me in English. Sri Mahaswami inquires, when did you arrive in India? In this country, it is a courtesy introduction question as soon as you are known a little. In this life, on the 16th December 1967, round 5 o'clock in the morning in Bombay at the Santa Cruz airport, flashed my reply. I did not add that it was raining, a totally out of season event. Sri Mahaswami attentively listened and repeated in English, in this life? A smile brightened his face, which until then had been mostly serious and concentrated. The members of our group laughed and commented among themselves with a knowing look. In this life? They translated my words into Telugu to their spouses. Behind me, where the number of employees of the enterprise had swollen in size, I could hear the English-speaking ones doing the same for the benefit of the non-English-speaking ones. So my first reply scored the bull's eye. That is, I did not miss my entry queue for the beginning of an exchange with the Mahaswami. But I reminded myself, let us keep a cool head. As per my information, Sri Mahaswami is an expert in the art of questioning. Since when are you interested in India? He asks me in Tamil through my friend who translated it into English. I had always a specific interest in India and its culture, but my enthusiasm arose when at the age of 17 in Romania, I came across the book A Search in Secret India by Paul Brunton. Did you study this book? He continues. Yes, I read it thrice, and I had been struck by the audience granted by Sri Mahaswami to the author at Chengalpattu, then by the author's devotion towards Sri Ramana Maharishi at Tiruvannamalai. I stopped for a while, but encouraged by his benevolent look, I restarted. By that time, I wanted to come immediately to India, but the war had stopped me. I had to wait for 27 years. Sri Mahaswami wore a serious air. He showed a discreet sign of blessing with the palm of his opened right hand towards me. What did you do in the meanwhile? He resumed. I studied in the secondary school, then medicine and philosophy at the University of Bucharest. I have worked as a medical doctor until the age of 40, when unexpectedly I started writing on Indian culture. Did you write a lot? I listed my articles, translations, books and other works published or due to the war not published. I then spoke about my first book, a new edition of an anthology of Indian literary fragments by a great Romanian poet. I mentioned that it is in print. As a proof, I brought out of my bag a copy, a small but smart brown book which I was able to smuggle out of Romania despite of the severe border checking imposed by the then totalitarian regime. I offered it, feigning indifference. On the plate placed at the bottom of the staircase, someone lifted the basket plate to within the reach of Sri Mahaswami, as following the traditional rules, one should not give anything directly into the hand of his sannyasin. He takes the book, brings it very near to his eyes and reads loudly. Anthology Sanskrita by George Kosbach. We can be sure that since the foundation of the monastic order of Sri Mahaswami more than 2 millenniaries ago, it was the first time that the Romanian language was uttered by the mouth of a head of this mutt. I was happy that the word Sanskrit was pronounced by him along with the name of an important Romanian poet. My friends from Madras seemed pleased, although I did not inform them about my intention to offer a book to Sri Mahaswami. Admiring whispers arose in front from the circle of the intellectuals and behind me in the group of workers. What sort of language is the Romanian? Is it not akin to French? Enquired Sri Mahaswami, keeping the book in his hand. Yes, I replied. The French and the Romanian languages derive from Latin, but even Latin was a language of the Indo-European group of languages that is close to Sanskrit. I added some philological remarks on an original language common to Sanskrit and to the majority of European languages. Sri Mahaswami listened with great interest. That explains the similarities between the European languages and Sanskrit, he concluded. Then he started to leaf through the book, commencing with its last pages, a sound choice as there laid the table of contents. He brought the book close to his eyes and was effectively reading in Romanian line after line, and this for several minutes. he chose to comment on the excerpts of the Ramayana, this great epic known and beloved in all of India, has been translated from Sanskrit and interpreted for centuries in almost all the languages of the Indian subcontinent. Are the Romanians interested in the Ramayana? Asked Sri Mahaswami. There is a growing interest as people discover the richness of the Indian culture. Before leaving for India, I have translated myself from English the condensed rendering of the Ramayana written by C. Rajagopalachari. The book had just come out in Romania, but do not yet have the copies. You had translated then the Ramayana into Romanian? Inquired Sri Mahaswami with a nuance of amazement. The name Ramayana created a surprised reaction from the entire audience. I heard comments and whispers. I am looked on admiringly. My friends from Madras do not show it, but one can guess how much they are pleased. We have not introduced an ordinary person. As for me, I wear a modest and detached look that I am sure befits me. Sri Mahaswami seems to have appreciated my statements. Was it only to flatter me? I do not think so. He sees further than that. He changed the topic. Now you are working at the Madras University? What is the subject of your research? He continued. I hastily replied. The philosophy of a contemporary French thinker, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, considered from the point of view of Vedanta. What is the importance of this work? A question that hits the point. I am thinking, and then I try to make myself clear. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin was a renowned paleontologist who died in 1950. He thought deeply about the fundamental data of the discipline he practiced. His broad conclusions come very near to Vedanta principles, although he never studied Indian philosophy systematically. Being a Jesuit father, he was a follower of Christian spirituality. The life and the work of this scientist is a worthwhile subject of research to me, as both his activities, spiritual research and scientific research in the realm of natural sciences, went hand in hand. Sri Mahaswami listened attentively to the translation of my friend from Madras. He made him repeat some expressions. Then he thought a while and asked, "Did you have some personal interest in this study?" Here, once again, he hit the bull's eye. It was true that for some time I had identified myself with this scientist who had become a philosopher while practicing a spiritual life. I had to state it now in public. Yes, I must declare that for some time I have been captivated by his way, as a man of religion, to explain the creation of the universe and the appearance of man. Sri Mahaswami seemed to wait the rest of my confessions. I had to continue. However, the spiritual research gained the upper hand, and now I am at a point where only a master of wisdom can guide me. Sri Mahaswami remained silent. I felt that I should let out the last thought kept secret until then. I came to India in order to find my guide, and I heaved a great sigh of relief. He did not show any surprise. He simply inquired, "And did you search for a long time?" Really, one cannot conceal anything from him. I have visited several famous places and I was impressed by the sanctity of those areas, I said, trying not to go too far in my appraisals. It was true that during my peregrinations before I met him, I had come across here and there the disciples of other disciples who had closely known a great master. Have I been too demanding? Did I search without much conviction? As to the burning point of the personal master, I felt I should not stress it now. I had arrived in India for a long stretch of studies and ready to settle down in India if necessary. I had no ties elsewhere and I liked the general atmosphere. It was as if I had all the time before me. I gave out some personal details. I am a bachelor, a vegetarian, purely vegetarian, chimed in my friends from Madras, and he cooks alone his food. A large smile brightens up the face of Sri Mahaswami. Both groups, the visitors who specifically came for darshan and the print workers, seem impressed. All comment, laugh, and show surprise. A European who has translated the Ramayana into an exotic language, who is serious about the high spiritual tradition of India, a bachelor, vegetarian, and who in addition cooks for himself. This is not to be found every day. Some turn admiring looks towards me. The others bend forward in order to see me better. Those from behind call their friends and point with their fingers towards the rare bird, giving a resume about what they have heard. Sri Mahaswami stares at me for a long period once again. I try to hold on to his look, but it is too powerful for me. I have to lower my eyes. He shows once again the open palm of his right hand in a calming gesture. He shakes his head gently in a sign of approval and points to me that I can sit. He turns towards the next ones, my friends from Madras, who stand at his left. The discussion continues in Tamil. He seems aware of every important cultural event from this important town. I have once again the opportunity to contemplate him to my heart's content. He seems in perfect harmony with himself, with the world, with God. Without any doubt, I was in front of an exceptional being. Is he a saint? More than a saint, I think. I feel he is one of those very rare ones who can lead a worthy seeker to the wisdom. He fits exactly with the image I had about a great sage. I am already dazzled with his sharp mind and the power he radiates. The audience neared its end. Sri Mahaswami looked at us and across us, I would say, perhaps dwelling a little more on me, or rather in me. The leader of our group stood up. It was the signal for us to stand too. Everyone tried their best to do their prostration as a parting greeting. I observed how Sri Mahaswami waited. I performed, stretching myself with all my length in the very traditional prostration which I had carefully rehearsed before leaving Madras. This was a surprise to the onlookers who, perched as they were at their vantage points, saw everything. When we had all finished, Sri Mahaswami bent a little and chose in the plate of gifts near him 2 oranges among the fruits offered by the visitors. He put them on the stair just below the platform on which he was sitting, and by his finger he indicated one to me, and by a circular movement of the hand he allotted the second to all the other members of our group. I hastened towards my orange and held it like a treasure. Sri Mahaswami stood up with a surprising ease for an elder person who had just been sitting for 2 hours. He took his water vessel in the right hand and the danda under the other arm. With his left fingers, he touches his necklace of Rudraksha beads. He stands for a long while, thoughtful. His old golden hue and his orange clothes contrast sharply with the obscure hall at the back. The same restrained presence, the same measure in his gestures. At last, a short look over us, stopping perhaps for a short second over me. Then he turns without haste to his right towards the space that was waiting behind, black and deep as the abyss of time. He slips inside slowly. His aura of matte light dissolves and the pale orange undulation fades away. There is a last vibration in that obscurity from which he took shape by his will, and he melts away as if in his own element. I had come nearer the door on the right side of the staircase with 5 steps in front of me on the platform. The little yellow mat was still warm with his presence. The plate with offerings had been taken away, but some little white flowers had fallen on the ground. I pick up one. It has more than a faint fragrance, perhaps more like a surplus of light. Who is the mysterious being who has been here and who seems so perfect? An overwhelming urge, almost childish, pulled me into an introspective mood to try and know him, as if to surround and thus determine who he was. God listens to children. Some even say that he is himself a great child who plays with Maya, the toy of the eternal illusion, creating and absorbing constantly universe after universe. I was unaware of what was to happen in the years to come. It was a holy insouciance that protected me. I turned towards the friends and onlookers who were discreetly waiting for me. All wanted to congratulate me, touch me, and hear my voice. I smiled, greeted, and spoke to as many people I could. When the majority seemed satisfied, I thought it was possible to retire from the scene. I cast for the last time a look over the narrow courtyard, now empty, with its bluish carpet, left alone in the subdued light of a day's end. How empty it was now! Who was this marvelous being? For all that I heard about him is less than a clod of earth before a majestic mountain. Who can know him? Who would limit him? Perhaps only his equals. But who equals God? Moving slowly away, still uplifted and possessed by the feeling of permanence at the touch of the permanence itself, I have the certitude the one I just met is none other than that, the one about whom the sages speak when they return from their ecstasy. Yes, he was that one who, through his mere goodwill, appears sometimes among men and reveals himself by shaking the foundations of civilization. Along with the unspeakable bliss of having been able to touch him with these mortal eyes and mind, I have a single doubt. Shall I be pure enough and worthy to always keep in my heart his blessed image as long as I have to wander in this transitory world? My friends from Madras took us to our place of residence in the spacious Indian car of our host. We had forgotten to change our clothes for the more formal town dress. At the silent dinner later, we kept the same clothes that we had worn for our momentous meeting. After all, they reminded us all of Sri Mahaswami. Madras, Thursday, 19th August 1968. After 3 days at the University of Madras, Dr. N. Virinathan, the younger of the friends who had accompanied me at Secunderabad and who had once again gone to visit Sri Mahaswami, came to find me and whispered in English, "Do you know what Sri Mahaswami said about you? Demetrian is a good man." Quite short, I thought. However, I thanked my friend. The words of exceptional people are so rare and valuable. I continue to work as Senior Research Fellow at the Center of Advanced Study in Philosophy at the University of Madras under the Director Dr. T.M.P. Mahadevan. I had originally joined the center in February 1968. My responsibilities in connection with the thesis for the PhD degree I was then working for left me time enough to deal with what seemed to me as being of the utmost importance: the progress in spiritual life under the protection and guidance of Sri Mahaswami. Sri Chandrasekharendra Saraswati, the retired head of the Sri Shankaracharya Smt, Kanchipuram. Soon curiosity, then necessity arose, compelling me to know more about the long life of Sri Mahaswami, especially before that first fateful meeting in Secunderabad. Devotees, let us close this episode and shall listen to the biographical data of Sri Mahaswami in the coming episode, bowing at the holy feet of the Gurus. Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara, Jaya Jaya Shankara.